Welcome to the Sound Health Network. In the following video, Dr. Sanjay Gupta speaks with our key partners, Dr. Francis Collins, the Director of the National Institutes of Health, Sunil Iyengar, the Director of Research at the National Endowment for the Arts, and Renee Fleming, soprano and artistic advisor at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.
Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and it is my great pleasure to join all of you and to be reunited with the wonderful Renee Fleming and my old professor, Dr. Francis Collins. It was just over 2 years ago that we all stood together on the stage of the Kennedy Center for this concert that blew my mind. It was showcasing the Sound Health Initiative. Today they're going to be joining forces with Sunil Iyengar, my friend, of the NEA for the launch of the Sound Health Network in partnership with the University of California, San Francisco. It's really going to build upon some of this incredible work to date that's been done by the National Institutes of Health, which Dr. Collins runs, and the Kennedy Center, where Renee is an artistic advisor. During this pandemic time, I think we are more grateful than ever for the beauty and the nourishment of music. I have to tell you, as you guys may have seen 2 years ago, my musical skills are nowhere near what yours are, but I love music no less. I have been doing a lot of these spontaneous music dance parties with my 3 teenage girls. And we dance like no one's looking because no one's looking. That's the nature of a pandemic. But it's so relaxing to hear the music. I remember so many of the things that Dr. Collins taught me about what was happening in the brain when I'm simply listening and even singing along. It makes such a difference for me, I got to tell you honestly, during this COVID time. So with that backdrop and that genuine sort of reflection on music, I'd like to welcome now Miss Renee Fleming, Dr. Francis Collins, and my friend Sunil Iyengar. Welcome, guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sanjay.
Thank you.
Love being
Sanjay.
here.
Sanjay, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your book, Keep Sharp. Building a brain at any age, this is something we all need and something I'm definitely looking forward to reading.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I guess I'd like to just sort of know for all of you how this has played out for you during the pandemic. And Renee, maybe I can start with you. What has this been like for you? Have you been able to still be as participatory with the music? I'm curious to know if you've ever taken like a busman's holiday where you go listen to other music. And if so, what are you listening to?
First of all, all of us who are in the performing arts have been grounded. We're not working at all, really. If we are, it's typically in a philanthropic way. We're trying to give back. We're trying to share what we can with young artists so they can continue their careers when this is over. And we're also trying to support the institutions that hire us so that they'll be still there at the end. But the thing that I found most extraordinary, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, was this outpouring of a desire to communicate through the arts, whether it was on balconies or out windows, but singing, playing, dancing. It just sort of reminded us that we come to this from an evolutionary standpoint, and it's been with us for as long as we have been human, and I find it so uplifting. So that's been the really good story, but I'm anxious to get back to work like all of my colleagues.
Yeah, no doubt, more than ever. Dr. Collins, running the NIH in the middle of a pandemic with all the various pressures that must come with. I am curious, your decompression, I know, has been a lot through music. How does it help you? What the process of using music to help de-stress? What do you do?
Well, it sure has been a stressful 12 months, and I've been a hermit in this home office where you see me right now, pretty much 24/7. Right through the wall over there is my baby grand piano, and it's gotten a lot of playing in the course of these months as just a way to stand up when it's just like a little much, and I need to do something to get my head out of the details of the latest stressful data about vaccines or monoclonal antibodies or whatever it is. Other thing I've tried to do is with my own staff, and there are 40,000 people who work at NIH, is in my weekly outreaches to them, sometimes to try to include a bit of a musical part. So it's been there. It's continued to provide for me a source of spiritual uplift at a time where, boy, I could use a lot of that this year. And thank God for music.
Yeah, I hear you. And I imagine a lot of people listening hear that as well. So Neil, I'm curious about your origin story as well with music. And I'll preface by saying, I don't know, we're both Indian and my parents are retired now. They're engineers their whole life and never imagined them really getting into music. And now they sing these Bollywood songs. They're doing karaoke. My dad is learning to play instruments and he's in his late 70s for the first time. It's kind of remarkable. But I'm not trying to lead you, but
No.
your origin story, how much was it Indian music or other types of music as well?
Well, as a kid, I learned how to play piano and then gave it up promptly at grade eight. And just like my parents warned me, I've grown to regret that ever since. But my parents actually, particularly my mom, she sings a lot. So she must know she knows hundreds of songs, often in various Indian genres. And I'll just say that during this time of COVID, when many people bake bread, etc., I've managed to teach myself ukulele through the help of online resources, of course. So that's been a lot of fun. And I inflicted 12th Street Rag onto my colleagues at a recent holiday party.
That's great. Part of the reason I was so excited to join all of you today is that I feel like for a lot of organizations, this COVID time has also been sort of like interrupted time. A lot of the things that people were working on sort of got interrupted, let alone the idea of trying to build new chapters. And yet that's exactly what you're doing. You're embarking on this bright new chapter and your collaboration together. And, I think everyone in this field really applauds your efforts. I wonder if you could have imagined all of this sort of turning into what it did when you first turned up for the dinner at the inn at the Little Washington back in 2015. Because that's where this really sort of began, right? I mean, Renee, I'm wondering, can you just share some of your recollections of that evening?
Well, it was an amazing evening because my husband and I were invited. We didn't know who was going to be there. We knew nothing about this, but I'd heard of the Inn at Little Washington, and I thought, well, let's just go. Let's have an adventure. And it changed my life in a way because I met Dr. Collins there, and it was the day after the marriage equality decision with 3 justices. I was seated between Justices Scalia and Ginsburg, who were both opera lovers. But it was a bit, things were a bit tense, I would say, in the beginning. But Dr. Collins brought his guitar along with him. We had a sing-along. Dr. Collins, why don't you tell them what we sang, because this is such a great story.
Well, I'd never met Renee, and I didn't know who was going to be at this dinner either. And yeah, it was a little tense because Scalia had written this, blistering dissent to the decision. And actually, Justice Kennedy had written the majority view, so he was not real popular with Scalia either. And yeah, you could kind of feel the tension in the air. But music, this is a great example of how music can bring people together. People began to kind of relax. You could see it. Scalia, who'd been kind of grumping around, stood up drinking his brandy and holding his cigar and began to get into it. And so we figured, okay, we got to do something appropriate for the time. What better than the Bob Dylan anthem, "The Times They Are A-Changin'"? And let's get everybody to sing that last line together. And they did. All 3 Supreme Court justices joined together by music at a time where they had not been very together the day before.
That's an incredible story.
Let's try it.
That's an incredible
Let's
story.
try it with Congress.
Right, I know. We got a few other targets for you now.
Oh, well, the project came about because I asked Dr. Collins why scientists were studying music. It didn't even make sense to me. And I was new at the Kennedy Center, and when he said he was very enthusiastic about the work that's being done, but it needed some more validation and some more rigor. And I said, well, I think that the Kennedy Center would be a great place to provide this platform for science with the audience, with the public. And it's just been like gangbusters. People love it.
And it gave me a chance to stir up interest at NIH, interest that now has grown to 54 scientists who work at NIH, who are part of our working group that's now designed a research program where we've already spent $20 million supporting research, and we aim to spend more. In fact, anybody who wants to apply, just go to NIH Sound Health, and you'll see what our current open application opportunities are. And now it's great to have as a partner NEA and UC San Francisco in this Sound Health network. Yeah, you're right, Sanjay. This is not one of those years to sort of say, well, we'll just have to put that aside for a while. Let's keep it building.
I'm just curious because people, they're now hearing this story, right, of how this whole thing came together, and you have 54 scientists. How unusual is that? I mean, a world-class soprano, the head of the NIH, get together and launch into a long-term partnership. Does this sort of thing happen, or is this a very rare sort of situation?
I think it's pretty unusual. It takes the exceptional energy and vision of a Renee Fleming. I mean, we had a meeting in the Tabard Inn, I think it was, a couple months after that inn at Little Washington to brainstorm about what might happen. And Renee was like, out there, let's do this. And I was like, I didn't know anybody else would have that same view. Isn't it like most things? It's relationships, when people from different disciplines get together and then the sparks fly and something happens that never would have otherwise.
Yeah, I love that there are more than 20 different divisions of the NIH who are somehow involved, and you don't get to do that many multi-division projects. This is one of those rare examples. And then I was constantly harping on my wonderful partners, because the Kennedy Center has been phenomenal in this as well, about the need for a resource center, a kind of a website or someplace that the general public and scientists also could go. And so that's when the NEA stepped up, and Sunil just really took this on and ran with it.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to offer that, having been invited by Dr. Collins to attend that January gathering in 2017, I was so impressed, I have to say, now that I can tell you both, with both Dr. Collins and Renee sitting through 2 days of solid, heavy-duty, hardcore scientific presentations. Perhaps Dr. Collins would, but he's a pretty busy man too. And Renee was asking all the right questions, I have to say, to the scientists and the people in the room. And I think the folks at the National Endowment for the Arts were just thrilled with the opportunity to partner this way. Deborah Rudder, the head of the Kennedy Center, also is a big part of this project, as is Ann Meyer-Baker, who's the music director at the National Endowment for the Arts. And so we all got together and particularly kind of riding alongside NIH and Renee and the Kennedy Center at first, and figuring out how can we create a big tent approach to bring all these different disciplines together. And who are these different groups? It's musicians, but it's also music therapists, neuroscientists, clinicians, health providers, and it's kind of a tall order to kind of get them all to communicate on the same platform. So I think that's where UCSF has really stepped in and is going to help us by creating this Sound Health Network we're talking about today.
Sunil, Renee brought up an interesting point, one that I had sort of thought about in preparation for this, and that is that she said when she first met Dr. Collins, why is the NIH studying music, essentially? What is the inflection point here? And I'm wondering, Sunil, was that a issue at all with the NEA? I mean, when you're making the case as Director of Research and Analysis that this makes sense, was there any pushback at all as thinking about the arts as this platform for science?
Not at all. So many people may know that the National Endowment for the Arts, the primary mission of the National Endowment for the Arts is to promote diverse opportunities for participating in the arts all across the country, communities large and small. But we also have a dual mission, which is to gather and collect and promote evidence about the value and impact of the arts for individuals and communities. And we'd love to do this ultimately, I think it's safe to say, for all art forms. So the other thing I will say is that we have a history at the National Endowment for the Arts for supporting military and veteran populations, music therapy and creative arts therapies for those populations. So there was also that value as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is remarkable, and I'm glad you're supporting that kind of therapy. You can find these videos online of how music therapy works. I watched a lot of it in preparation for the story, and anybody can do this. You should watch it because it is remarkable to see how quickly music can act as a therapeutic. And I love the idea that we heard of the music explorers, and Dr. Charles Lim and Julian Johnson. They mentioned that in their welcome. These activities that bring in all these different people, scientists and educators and therapists and musicians, obviously, all these people coming together to try and be a part of this Sound Health Network, which is remarkable work. Renee, I was fascinated in your book, Inner Voice, in which you shared your story about dealing with crippling stage fright. everyone's surprised when I say this because everyone has seen you perform. And did he just say stage fright? But you had crippling stage fright. That experience also was in part what led you to want to explore this connection between mind and body. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it really got me interested also in performance psychology. And the more I looked into it, the more I really felt that we are so much whole people when we're artists. And when we're moving through the world, you can't really separate out different parts of ourselves. And as a performer, particularly because we have to be in the zone to be good at what we do. And it's a flow state. It's a form of that. And if we're crippled by insecurities or the sense that we're being judged negatively all the time, you can't perform well. Which is why when I met Dr. Collins, I was there and ready with the right questions.
Sure were.
We're running out of time, unfortunately, because I'm really enjoying this conversation. But I do want to leave people with a little bit of a visual as we're sort of wrapping up here. Dr. Collins, after you would wrap up dinners in the Shenandoah Valley, when you were young, when you were a child, your family would sit around the living room and play instruments. And you'd even put on musicals. And I just imagine that, later to be Dr. Francis Collins, head of the NIH, running around as a little kid, playing instruments with the rest of the family, putting on these musicals. It's just a great visual. And I love thinking about it. But I'm curious, you talked about how music helps you decompress during this very stressful time. How has music driven you otherwise in this remarkable work that you do as the chief scientist for our country?
Music has brought us together, probably for hundreds of thousands of years. It has probably kept us in community zones as opposed to fighting each other. Although there are fight songs, there's also a lot of songs about worship and prayer and grief and supporting each other, whether it's the Inn at Little Washington singing The Times They Are A-Changing to Supreme Court justices, or whether it's, as I had the chance with Renee, singing Hard Times Come Again No More, and in the midst of the pandemic, a song that was written more than 150 years ago, but so fits the current circumstance. It brings something out in you that you didn't quite know was there. And if you're a scientist who's interested in human behavior and in neuroscience, but also a human being who wants to experience life fully, music gives you that opportunity that I have found very few other things can tap into. It's a gift.
It's a beautiful way to leave this session. I really do want to thank all of you for this incredible work that you're doing. I think there are going to be people who are interested in this field, who are just young scientists right now because of the tone that you've set and the importance that you've given this. So I can't wait to see what comes out of this new network. I also hope that we can get together in person soon. I am told that Dr. Collins often brings his guitar and entices a song from Renee. So that would be amazing. I'm going to be an optimist. I'll bring along my accordion. I don't know if that's adding any value. And maybe Sunil and I would even do a little Bollywood dance.
There we go.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that.
Got it. Just to see you guys in person would be magical. But thank you very much. Really wonderful to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thank you, everybody.